This is the hardest video I have ever had to make. As a Copt, growing up I was fascinated by the miracle of the Holy Fire. Its story was constantly being told to me my whole life. It was constantly presented to me as a general Christian witness that unites all Christians. It's something we should all be proud of. Every year on Holy Saturday, the day before Pascha, thousands of Christians gather in Jerusalem inside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where Christ's body once laid. They wait in complete anticipation for what is said to be one of the greatest recurring miracles in Christendom, the descent of the Holy Fire. The ceremony takes place inside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the site traditionally believed to contain the tomb of Christ. According to Eastern Orthodox tradition, the Greek Orthodox Patriarch enters the tomb of Christ, the edicule. He is searched beforehand to ensure he carries no matches or lighters. The tomb is inspected and sealed earlier in the day. Inside he prays, then miraculously a flame appears, said to descend from heaven. He emerges holding lit candles. The flame is then passed rapidly throughout the church. In some accounts, the fire is said not to burn during the first few minutes. The numbers vary, but it's supposed to signify the amount of years Christ lived on earth. This event has been associated primarily with the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate of Jerusalem, and it is broadcast worldwide. The flame is even flown to Orthodox countries, including my own church. For many believers, it is presented as a visible sign of Christ's resurrection. It didn't take long for me before I was confronted with another perspective, one that presented this miracle not devotionally, but polemically. For many Eastern Orthodox believers, the Holy Fire is not simply a celebration of the resurrection. It is often taken as a divine confirmation of the Eastern Orthodox Church itself, particularly in opposition to the institutional claims of Roman Catholicism and even to the Armenian Apostolic Church, and by extension, the wider Oriental Orthodox communion to which I belong to as a Copt. The miracle is sometimes framed not merely as a sign of Christ's resurrection, but as proof of which church possesses true apostolic legitimacy. This was not how I understood it growing up, and even when I was presented with this polemical attitude, it's very easy to refute. The view I held was much simpler and much less sectarian. This was a miracle that occurred at the tomb of Christ on the day we commemorate his resurrection. It was about the event of Pascha itself, not about elevating one denomination over another. In fact, I was told that my own church participated in the ceremony. I was taught that clergy from the Oriental Orthodox Church would enter alongside the Eastern Orthodox Patriarch into the tomb of Christ to receive the Holy Fire. The impression given to me was one of a shared reverence, not rivalry. It was a miracle for all Christians present, not a credential for one communion against another. Such was my position for most of my life. When you clicked on this video, you probably assumed one of two things. If you are not Eastern Orthodox, you may think I'm simply taking another swipe at a different denomination. If you are Eastern Orthodox, you may assume this is just another example of my firm, perhaps even aggressive, disagreements with Eastern Orthodox doctrine. One might say that because this quote-unquote miracle refutes my church, I must have to come out and say something. I have to address it somehow. Let me be clear from the beginning of the video. This video is not motivated by rivalry, and I will not pretend neutrality to make my position seem stronger. I do have strong convictions against your beliefs. I do not hide them, but that is not why I'm making this video. Believe me, this video was difficult for me to make. The reason this video was so hard for me to make is simple. I grew up believing this was one of the great miracles of Christendom. This wasn't some fringe story I heard once or twice. It was woven into my imagination as a child. It was told with reverence. It was presented as sacred history unfolding in real time, every single year. This was something I was even taught in Sunday school. It wasn't even implied to be controversial. I know that many people watching this, including people from my own church, will feel scandalized even hearing it questioned. Some are simple in their faith, babes who care not about these petty disputes between denominations. Even if it were a hoax, even if my title and my thumbnail were right, that this was not a miracle, how could I possibly be the one to say it? Who am I to challenge a religious image that has stood for centuries, one that many view as a mark of the Christianity I myself believe in? Who am I to speak against something entire nations celebrate as divine? Would this not hurt people? Who would I even be helping by making this video, if not non-Christians and enemies of Christ? I fear I may even wound the faithful of my own church. There's nothing inherently dangerous about the very concept of this miracle. It doesn't challenge the claims of my church. There's nothing false about celebrating the resurrection. It is presented as evidence of the Lord we all believe in. It is meant to glorify Christ. The Eastern Orthodox Church is the closest apostolic communion to my own. We differ on very few things compared to the wider Christian world. We share a nearly identical faith. This is what makes this hard. Why am I making this? It's because what I discovered did not come from atheist attacks. It did not come from polemical enemies of Christianity. It did not come from anti-Orthodox propaganda. It came from the very mouths of the Eastern Orthodox, from their own admissions, from evidence that surfaced in my own lifetime for the first time in history. That is what compelled me to make this video. If this were merely an external accusation, it would be easy to dismiss. But when the cracks appear from inside the structure itself, how can I tell myself to look away? At some point, I had to ask myself, if something is not true, and I come to know it, can I remain silent simply to preserve comfort? No, rather, if something is a public falsehood, and if it may even be fashioned as a weapon against the very altar from which I partake, how could I not speak? When I mention that this doesn't prove one denomination over the other, everyone knows the Eastern Orthodox position of this miracle. They claim that this is a proof of their church over mine. They use this as a deception to draw people from my altar. How could I not speak? How could I keep that to myself? Yet, I can already hear the retort. But here you are, attacking the very Christianity you claim to believe in, even if it is to defend your measly denomination. What answer could I give that would not make me feel the weight of that accusation myself? This, my brothers and sisters, is why every step of making this video has been a battle within my own mind. I've constantly had to ask myself, should I be complicit in a lie I did not invent? Why should I carry the guilt of a deception I did not create? And yet another voice would answer, yes, someone must speak, but let it not be you. Let someone else risk the scandal. Think of the faithful of your very own church. After contending with my own heart, I found no solace except in the words of the very men who announced this lie and gave me the burden of knowing a truth not many people know about. The men entrusted with the ceremony, the very ones who themselves admit it was a hoax, were strangely the ones who gave me the courage and peace to announce what they have kept secret. Metropolitan Cornelius of Petra, the very man who brought out the holy fire in 2001. He once told a journalist, Dimitris Alikakos, the following when he was asked, "Your Eminence, I want you to tell me, hand on heart, I know the sacred mission of the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate, its enemies, as well as the threatening environment from those of other faiths and claimants to its privileges. Do you believe I should reveal the truth about the holy fire?" The Metropolitan answered, "I will not hesitate to answer you. I have been here for nearly 6 decades, serving God and the truth of our Christ as a Holy Sepulchre Brotherhood member. Nothing is more Christian than to serve and speak the truth. It is not possible for the truth to harm the church. What does Jesus say in John? Know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Therefore, you have a duty, now that it has fallen to you for the truth to be revealed, to spread it. Deliver us from this lie." That line has been ringing in my ears ever since I first heard it. The truth cannot harm the church. It is evident why the Eastern Orthodox communion has not officially come out with this truth. They know for sure it will harm their church, and it will be one of the biggest scandals in history. But the church cannot be harmed by truth. A church founded on Christ cannot be culpable for a lie. I cannot say what the truth will do to the image of the Greek Orthodox Church. That's not mine to judge. The truth would evidently harm their image, and they know this. But I'm still certain of this. The truth cannot harm the church. As an Oriental Orthodox Christian, I believe that bringing the truth into light is the least scandalous path, precisely because their sins are not our own. We are not responsible for what we did not create. The answer to the question, why am I making this video, is answered easily. I am making this video because the sin is not our own, and therefore it can easily come from us. The truth can never harm the church if the church never fashioned the lie. Why should Christianity bear guilt for the crimes of the Crusades, for the burnings of non-believers, for persecutions, killings, inquisitions, and massacres? It is not because of the easy answer we sometimes hear, that the body of Christ, it's filled with corruption, and that only Christ himself is holy, only Christ is the light of the world. No, it is because the true body of Christ is one, holy, Catholic, and apostolic. a communion of righteous saints, themselves made the light of the world, who preserve the name of Christ and overcome the darkness of those who merely claim the name but do not live it. This is the greatest proof of the resurrection. This is the true holy light of the resurrection. If those crimes never harm the church, because they were never truly acts of the church, why should we preserve a lie when the lie is used as a thorn to simple-minded, to invalidate the very bread that the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church breaks? Is it because the men who carried such things out look like us? Even John, the beloved of the true light, says, "They went out from us, but they did not really belong to us. For if they had belonged to us, they would have remained with us. But their going showed that none of them belonged to us." If guilt is not ours, we should not carry it. If something is not true, we should not conceal it. And if Christ is the truth, then we do him no dishonor by refusing to protect a lie, especially a lie which may itself have been fashioned to contend against his body. The Lord himself says, "Therefore, whatever you have spoken in the dark will be heard in the light, and what you have spoken in the ear in inner rooms will be proclaimed on the housetops." If even the angels of the Lord will one day proclaim what is hidden, how could I be at fault for my mouth matching theirs in the present? If what is whispered privately will be made public, why should I labor to make private what is transgressed publicly? The last thing I want to say in this introduction is this. I'm not a denier of miracles. On the contrary, I believe miracles are real, and more than that, there's nothing philosophically incoherent with public spectacles themselves. I even believe that miracles can be public events witnessed by millions that are recurring. This video is not an argument against the supernatural, and it is not an argument against Christianity. It is not an argument against God acting in history. And for any enemy of Christ who might try to use this video as ammunition against the faith itself, I leave you with a challenge. Examine the claims of the Zaytun apparition that occurred during a period of about 3 years, beginning in 1968. Examine it with the same level of scrutiny, the same critical intensity that I have applied here to the Holy Fire. Because the greatest critiques I have heard from Protestants, Muslims, and even some Eastern Orthodox are not denials of the supernatural in this apparition. They are concessions to it, paired with the accusation that such phenomena are demonic. On the other side, the strongest defense I've heard from atheists is that something may have been seen, but we have to default to naturalism, mass hallucination, misinterpretation, anything but God. So if you demand a critical lens here, I beg you to demand it there. Be consistent. My goal is not to tear down belief in miracles. It is to distinguish between what is true and what is not, and to ensure that our faith rests on truth, not illusion. Let me introduce you to what may be one of the greatest infiltrations and one of the most stunning exposures of a religious practice from within its own ranks in modern history. Before I present the historical findings, you should know who Dimitris Alikakos is. Dimitris Alikakos is a Greek Orthodox Christian and a professional journalist. His father was an Orthodox priest, a man he stood beside in the sanctuary year after year as a child. For years, he carried the conviction that the Holy Fire in Jerusalem has a unique aura because it's the place of the tomb of Christ. His father had taught him that the fire lit in any Orthodox service was the same method of lighting in the tomb of Christ. In April 2018, he began to use his investigative skills to learn about the Holy Fire in Jerusalem. As he says, it was a long-standing personal need. He is also an investigative journalist and editor-in-chief of a Greek fact-checking organization. After 3 trips to Jerusalem, he published his findings in 2019 in a book titled Redemption on the Holy Fire, concluding that the flame is ignited by human hands. What followed was not silence. The Jerusalem Patriarchate had taken his findings seriously enough to attempt to discredit him. A legal battle ensued. The case went to court, and he was vindicated in 2022 and fully vindicated by 2024. The Patriarchate of Jerusalem proceeded with the deletion of all announcements against Alikakos on the miracle of the Holy Fire in August of 2024. His investigation, his evidence, and the court's ruling stand as of today. This is not the story of an enemy attacking the church. This is the story of the son of a priest, a man who followed the evidence where it led, and who was, at the beginning at least, encouraged by the very ones who performed the ceremony. Let us follow the chronology of his major findings. The story starts in 2001 with Archbishop Cornelius of Petra. In 2001, on the program Grey Zones, Archbishop Cornelius had said that the holy fire was a natural light lit from the unsleeping lamp that is kept in the sacristy of the Church of the Resurrection, and it is made supernatural through the invocation of grace by prayer. Let's take a look.
Ο Πατριάρχης ζητεί με ειδική ευχή, δια της εντεύξεως, τον αγιασμό του φωτός. Και οι ευχές...
Οι ευχές έχουν τη δύναμη να αγιάσουν το φυσικό φως. Γιατί, όπως ξέρουμε, υπάρχει το υπερφυσικό φως.
Εδώ μιλάμε για φυσικό φως.
Ναι, εδώ μιλούμε για φυσικό φως, αλλά ευχές οι οποίες αναγινώσονται υπό του Πατριάρχου ή υπό του Αρχιερέως, καθαγιάζουν και το φυσικό φως και επομένως έχει την χάρη του Αγίου Φωτός. Είναι φυσικό φως το οποίο ανάβεται από την ακίνητο καντήλα η οποία φυλάσσεται στο σιωπιοφυλάκιο του Ναού της Αναστάσεως.
Κτιστό και άκτιστο φως, φυσικό δηλαδή και υπερφυσικό φως συνδέει το θαύμα. Ποιο είναι αυτό?
Το θαύμα είναι η επίκληση ή η προσευχή του Αρχιερέως και αγιάζεται το φως.
This is remarkable because later that year, the holy fire came forth from the hands of Cornelius. It was he who entered the holy edicule and emerged with lit candles. This testimony was significant, but not definitive, as he had stated that it was lit naturally only prior to his having directly participated in that ceremony that year. The interview was before the ceremony. One could argue he was simply uninformed until he had actually experienced the miracle. Regardless, it was a good starting point for Alikakos' goal of uncovering the truth. Alikakos didn't know it now, but later in October of 2018, he would personally sit down with Cornelius and get him to be less elusive. He got him to admit that there is no miracle. What I'm about to show you is the first recorded testimony by a hierarch describing how the holy fire is lit, after he himself had entered the Holy Sepulchre at noon on Holy Saturday.
Το γεγονός ότι μπαίνει το καντήλι αναμένο και ανάβει από εκεί τα κεριά του Πατριάρχης είναι αληθές.
Ναι, αλήθεια είναι.
Εσείς το βγάλατε το φως το 2001, με αυτόν τον τρόπο ανάψατε τα κεριά από το καντήλι.
Ανάβω εγώ τα κεριά μου, από τα κεριά μου ή του Πατριάρχου ανάβει και ο Αρμένιος.
Τα κεριά ο Πατριάρχης από πού τα ανάβει?
Από την καντήλα.
Από το καντήλι. Ναι. Για να καταλάβουμε με βάση τη θεολογία και την Ορθοδοξία πού είναι το θαύμα. Το θαύμα είναι στο πώς ανάβει ή στον καθαγιασμό.
Ο καθαγιασμός είναι εκείνος.
Το θαύμα. Ναι, αλλά ανάβει με φυσικό τρόπο.
Ανάβει με φυσικό τρόπο.
Άρα το φως, τα κεριά του ο Πατριάρχης τα ανάβει από την κανδύλα που είναι αναμένη όταν μπαίνει μέσα. Σωστά? Σωστά. Εσείς το κάνατε μία φορά.
Ναι, μία φορά το έκανα.
Όταν μπήκατε μέσα στο Πανάγιο Τάφο, τι είδατε?
Υπάρχει τοποθετημένη η κανδύλα που ανάβει. Υπάρχει.
Αναμένη.
Εγώ ξέρω ότι το καντήλι μπαίνει αναμένο και φεύγει αναμένο.
Ο κόσμος ή τουλάχιστον αυτοί που έχουν κριτικό μυαλό, πιστοί, Ορθόδοξοι, Χριστιανοί, αλλά που αναζητάνε και την αλήθεια. Δεν έχουν δικαίωμα αυτοί να μάθουν, σεβασμιότατε?
Μα σας λέω, γράφουν τόσα τα βιβλία τα δικά μας της Εκκλησίας, τα επίσημα βιβλία του Πατριαρχείου. Όχι αυτό που...
Δεν μιλάνε πουθενά για κανδύλα όμως αναμένη.
Ναι, αλλά δεν λένε και θαύμα. Λένε τελετή. Όλα τα οδηπορικά και τα λοιπά λένε τελετή Αγίου Φωτός. Δεν λένε θαύμα. Δεν υπάρχει το θαύμα.
Behold, the testimony of one who himself led the ceremony. There is no miracle. That is his words. Of course, this conversation I just showed was from October of 2018. Alikakos had not had this interview yet as of April of 2018. He was still working with Cornelius' statements from 2001, and he knew that the best place to start was to learn about this unsleeping lamp kept in the sacristy. In April 12, 2018, he contacted the chief secretariat of the Patriarchate of Jerusalem to obtain the phone number of Archbishop Cornelius of Petra. While trying to reach Cornelius, he was connected to the elder chief secretary of the Patriarchate, the Archbishop of Constantina, Aristarchos. I will cover what happened privately between Alikakos and Aristarchos after going through the evidences caught on camera, lest we get the accusation that we are building our case on conjecture. For now, let us follow with our chronology. On July 2nd, 2018, Alikakos had traveled to Jerusalem to investigate further after having had decent confirmation from the secretary over the phone that the holy fire was indeed lit by natural means. Upon arriving at Jerusalem, Alikakos' relationship with Aristarchos had secured him a meeting with the elder sacristan, Archbishop Isidoros of Hierapolis. Archbishop Isidoros has participated directly in the holy fire ceremony as elder sacristan since at least 2013 and indirectly since 2005. Alikakos was granted a personal tour of the tomb of Christ by the elder sacristan himself. In recent years, we have obtained clear visual evidence of the so-called unsleeping lamp, and footage shows Isidoros personally placing the lamp inside the tomb approximately 45 minutes before the ceremony begins. For the most part, this detail has gone unnoticed. The sacristan stands motionless, holding the lamp, and amid the noise and chaos of the ceremony, it is nearly impossible to discern what is happening. After standing motionless for a couple minutes, he enters the tomb. After many minutes, he emerges without the lamp. It was only during the restrictions of COVID-19, when the crowds were absent and visibility was unobstructed, that we were able to see the process much more clearly. Notice how Isidoros was not searched at all upon his entering into the tomb. This will be important later. With that in mind, let us go back to Alikakos' meeting with Isidoros. During this tour, Alikakos had asked very firmly where the unsleeping lamp was placed. Archbishop Isidoros had pointed here. Alikakos captured the moment on camera. A while later, Alikakos asked to see the unsleeping lamp for himself. The elder sacristan Isidoros agreed and led him into the sacristy. From there, they entered the sanctuary, climbed a few steps to the left of the altar, and there it was, the unsleeping lamp, kept exactly where Cornelius had said it was 17 years earlier. Alikakos photographed it, treating the visit as a concrete check on Cornelius's earlier testimony. We have rare footage of the 2009 Holy Light ceremony that corroborates Isidoros' account of exactly where the unsleeping lamp is placed inside the tomb. If you notice, you can see the unsleeping lamp with this second red lamp. It will become important later, keep that in the back of your mind. Alikakos wanted more than the location of where it was placed. He wanted to know when the lamp is lit. Was it before the service? So he asked Isidoros to demonstrate lighting it. In real time, Alikakos could see and photograph a clear visual difference between the lamp unlit and the lamp lit. On that basis, he concluded that the lamp is brought into the tomb unlit. By this point, after earlier phone conversations with Aristarchus, Alikakos had already concluded that the miracle was not genuine. Working from that assumption, the sequence seemed to explain itself. The lamp is brought in unlit by the sacristan. Once the sacristan exits, the tomb is sealed. Later, it is unsealed. The Patriarch enters and then emerges with his candles already burning. For Alikakos, the chain of custody narrowed the possibilities to a single point of intervention. The obvious suspect was the sacristan himself, and in the present day, that meant Isidorus, the very man standing in front of him. In Alikakos' reconstruction, the sacristan must be the one who lights the lamp. There's no other way. Alikakos did not have to come to this conclusion on his own. He did not know he would hear it from Isidorus himself, but before that, he had heard it from another former sacristan. Meet a former archbishop of the Holy Sepulchre, who had served for 4 years as sacristan of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. He was the former Archbishop Nicephorus of Ascalon. Remember, for 4 consecutive years, he was the one who placed the unsleeping lamp in the tomb. Look what he admits.
Πάμε τώρα, σεβασμιότατε, να θυμηθούμε και να πούμε πώς ανάβει το καντήλι. Να το πούμε για άλλη μια φορά, να το πούμε στην κάμερα. Λοιπόν, ποια ήταν η εμπειρία σας? Εσείς ήσασταν σκευοφύλακας το 85, το 86, το 87 και το 88. Βγάλατε 4 φορές.
Ακριβώς.
Έβαλα
την ακίνητη καντήλα αυτή που λέμε.
Ναι, 4 φορές.
Το καντήλι το έβαλα στον Πανάγιο Τάφο και το άναψα εγώ.
Το ανάψατε
το
εσείς.
Το άναψα εγώ με σπίρτα, άναψα το καντήλι.
Μας λέτε ότι ανάψατε το καντήλι μέσα στον Πανάγιο Τάφο. Το πήγατε.
Το πήγα και το άναψα.
Και το ανάψατε με σπίρτα.
Με σπίρτα.
Αυτό έγινε 4 φορές.
4 φορές.
Την ίδια ακριβώς δηλαδή διαδικασία.
Και
τις 4
γιατί αυτά δεν αλλάζουν, ναι.
Χρονιές.
Ακριβώς.
Πώς μάθατε τι έπρεπε να κάνετε? Πού το μάθατε?
Αυτό είναι ενδιαφέρον, διότι δεν μου είχε ενημερώσει κανείς τι πρέπει να κάνω και πώς να το κάνω.
Την πρώτη χρονιά.
Ακριβώς, την πρώτη χρονιά. Οπότε πήρα και εγώ το καντήλι από το σκευοφυλάκιο που το κρατάμε και το πήγα στον Πανάγιο Τάφο. Το πήγαινα στον Πανάγιο Τάφο. Ο Θεός τον έστειλε σίγουρα τον Δρακομάνο για να μου πει εκείνη την ώρα. Ο κόσμος γεμάτος, ο ναός γεμάτος κόσμο, έτσι. Και εγώ βγαίνω τώρα από το σκευοφυλάκιο, από το καθολικό, τον κυρίως ναό του Ναού της Αναστάσεως, από την πόρτα που βγαίνει στο Γολγοθά, προς το Γολγοθά, και από εκεί πίσω από την αποκαθήλωση πήγαινα για να πάω στον Πανάγιο Τάφο να βάλω το καντήλι μέσα. Εκεί με συναντάει ο Δεργομάνος, ο Ελευθεροπόλης Χριστόδουλος, και μου λέει, Νικηφόρε, μου λέει, έχεις σπίρτα? Μου λέει, έτσι αυτός μου το είπε. Έχεις σπίρτα? Μου λέει, για να ανάψεις το καντήλι? Γιατί εγώ θα το ανάψω, λέω, το καντήλι. Ναι, μου λέει. Δεν έχεις σπίρτα? Λέω, δεν έχω σπίρτα. Και μου έδωσε εκείνο σπίρτα. Λοιπόν, και τα πήρα κι εγώ και φυσικά άναψα το καντήλι και το άφησα πάνω στο.
Και βέβαια την επόμενη χρονιά και την επόμενη και την τελευταία είχατε τη γνώση.
Ακριβώς.
Και είχατε σπίρτα πάνω σας.
Ακριβώς, ακριβώς.
Πώς νιώθετε που λέτε αυτή την αλήθεια?
Κοιτάξτε, εγώ ποτέ δεν μπόρεσα να δεχτώ ότι το Άγιο Φως ήταν θαύμα. Γιατί? Πρώτα δεν δέχομαι ότι κάποιος μπορεί να μου πει, έλα εδώ, στις 1 η ώρα θα σου κάνω ένα θαύμα. Κοιτάξτε.
Το κάνετε για λόγους συνείδησης?
Κοιτάξτε, δεν θα έλεγα πώς ανάβει το ακίνητο καντήλι, γιατί δεν ήταν δικιά μου δουλειά. Σου είπε ο Πατριάρχης, ο οποίος είναι υπεύθυνος, έτσι. Αλλά όταν διάβασα πέρυσι στην ιστοσελίδα που έγραψε ο Πατριάρχης και είπε ότι είναι θαύμα και ότι το ανάβει με βαμπάκι πάνω στον Αγιο Τάφο, αυτό δεν μπορούσα να το ανεχτώ, γιατί αυτό είναι απάτη, καθαρή απάτη. Ακριβώς.
Το οποίο το θεωρείτε, το χαρακτηρίζετε με βαριά λέξη.
Εννοείται την απάτη?
Ναι.
Τι άλλο να το πω? Ότι ήταν λάθος το και αυτό. Κατά λάθος το είπε. Και από το βιβλίο σου, και από ό,τι ξέρω, δηλαδή, ο Κορνήλιος, ο Σεβοσμένος ο Πέτρας, και αυτός έκανε παρόμοια δήλωση, ο σημερινός σκευοφύλακας έκανε παρόμοια δήλωση, ο Άγιος Γεράσον έκανε παρόμοια δήλωση και είμαι σίγουρος και πολλοί άλλοι, έτσι.
Να σας ρωτήσω, Σεβασμιότατε, πόσοι νομίζετε ότι ξέρουν το μυστικό στο Πατριαρχείο?
Δεν μπορώ να ξέρω. Γιατί κανείς δεν μιλάει, ας πούμε, για αυτό το θέμα, είτε διότι φοβούνται, ας πούμε, την κοινή γνώμη, είτε διότι φοβούνται τον Πατριάρχη με τους τιμωρήσει, επειδή είπανε κάτι, ας πούμε, που δεν θέλει αυτός να κοινοποιηθεί. Δεν ξέρω, ο καθένας έχει τους λόγους του, έτσι.
Η αποκάλυψη της αλήθειας, πιστεύετε, θα κάνει καλό στην πίστη και στην Εκκλησία ή όχι?
Κοιτάξτε, αν δεν κάνει καλό στην πίστη, έτσι, τότε δεν αξίζει η πίστη μας καθόλου. Βέβαια, διότι όταν προσπαθούμε με ψέματα, με απάτες να στηρίξουμε την πίστη μας, ουσιαστικά εμείς δεν καταργούμε την πίστη μας, τη συκοφαντούμε.
How significant of a testimony. The very man who brought in the unsleeping lamp admits to being the one who naturally lights it. Most of you have probably forgotten about that red lamp which I showed earlier. The second lamp we saw set beside the unsleeping lamp. Even after Alikakos had felt he already mapped the procedure around the unsleeping lamp, Alikakos kept pushing, because this second lamp raised a fresh question. Who handles it and when is that lit? Through a series of phone calls, he learned that the red lamp was the responsibility of the eldest of the guardians, Monk Panteleimon. So on October 22 of 2018, Alikakos traveled to Jerusalem, met Panteleimon in person, and was shown the red lamp directly. In Alikakos' account, Panteleimon confirmed the same crucial point. It is placed inside unlit. Almost as if the year itself had supplied the visual footnote and we already had a lot of confirmations, 2018 also gave us an unusually revealing clip from an Armenian priest's channel.
Για το βιβλίο μαζί. Έχετε φως. Έχετε φως.
After the patriarch emerges with the candles, the priest enters the tomb. Inside, he notices the red lamp with a candle positioned beside it. The priest is then interrupted from recording. Moments later, Monk Panteleimon himself goes in, takes the red lamp, and comes back out carrying it. The sequence is brief, but the implication is clear. The red lamp has its own handler, its own timing, and a visible trail that can be followed on camera. 3 years later, the same Armenian priest posted another clip, this time from Easter 2021. It had a deliberately mocking title, Proof of a Miracle Exists, Holy Light. It reads like sarcasm. The video shows exactly why. Watch closely. No, your eyes did not deceive you. Not only can we confirm that in 2021, this is the first time the patriarch enters the tomb, we can also match the footage to the broadcast live stream with precision. We can identify the exact priest who recorded this video from the broadcast alone. We can even make out what's on his phone screen. an image lining up with the Armenian clergy standing directly in front of him. You can even catch the exact instant he zooms in and all his micro movements with his arms when he's changing the angle of his recording. It's truly remarkable. This is documented evidence of an already pre-lit fire before the Patriarch enters. Up to this point, the case is already closed, not because of rumors, but because of converging, internally consistent first-hand evidence. A former sacristan describing the matches and the practical mechanics by which the lamp is lit, admissions about the procedure, and even a metropolitan who himself entered the tomb and emerged with the candles, openly saying that it is not a miracle and it was already lit for him when he entered. That isn't just testimony. That is direct procedural insider evidence enough on its own to establish what is happening. But what comes next is overkill, because now it isn't merely insiders describing the mechanism, it's the mechanism appearing on camera. It's not someone telling you what happened, it's the lens catching what is already there. In the clip I just showed, before the Patriarch enters, you can see a small flame, briefly visible, partially concealed under a red casing, burning in the exact location where the red lamp and unsleeping lamp are kept. Not once the miracle happens, not after the miracle happens, but before the entry. Watch again. The case was already closed, yet Alikakos still wasn't satisfied. Even with the confession of a former sacristan in hand, and even with the testimony of a metropolitan who entered the tomb after the sacristan, filling the very role that in other years the Patriarch himself occupies, Alikakos wanted to go straight to the living nerve of the operation, the man currently responsible for it. So he returned to Jerusalem on November 25th of 2018. This time, no intermediaries, no second-hand relays. He requested a direct sit-down with Isidorus himself, the elder sacristan. This is what makes it land. Isidorus isn't a name from the archives. He isn't a former official whose words can be dismissed as distant or disgruntled. He held the office then, he holds it now, and as I record and upload this video, and unless something changes, he is the sacristan who will carry out the service again this year in 2026. Let us watch history.
Το τελετουργικό συνήθως πολύ λίγοι το γνωρίζουν και οι διακονητές που έχουν κάνει στον χρόνο γνωρίζουν όλο το τελετουργικό πώς γίνεται.
Δεν γνωρίζουν όμως ίσως τη λεπτομέρεια.
Δεν γνωρίζουν κάποιες λεπτομέρειες συγκεκριμένες, αλλά.
Πρακτικά, πώς θα το. Αν γνωρίζουν μόνο ότι μπαίνει. Κάποιοι λένε ότι μπαίνει αναμένη, αλλά κάποιοι που ξέρουν ότι μπαίνει σβηστή και ανάβει μέσα, και αυτοί είναι πολύ λίγοι, πάρα πολύ λίγοι από ό,τι κατάλαβα. Αν άνθρωποι είμαστε, πάθετε κάτι, πώς θα το μάθει ο επόμενος, ποιος θα το πει.
Έχουν style.
Από ό,τι κατάλαβα, αυτοί που λένε ας πούμε την αλήθεια, τη λεπτομέρεια αυτή δεν την ξέρουν. Δηλαδή, ο Σεβασμιότατος Αρίσταρχος δεν την ξέρει, δεν την ήξερε.
Εντάξει, δεν ξέρω ακριβώς μια μικρή λεπτομέρεια.
Ναι, αλλά αυτή η μικρή λεπτομέρεια κάνει τη διαφορά όμως. Κάνει όχι τη διαφορά, είναι η ουσία. Η λεπτομέρεια αυτή είναι η ουσία. Γιατί άμα δεν την ξέρεις, χαλάει όλη η διαδικασία. Λέτε ότι κάποιος θα ενημερωθεί, αυτό θέλω να μου πείτε.
Εθνικοί γνωρίζουν, όλο το τελετουργικό γνωρίζουν.
Και αφήνετε την καντήλα και τι κάνετε. Να το πούμε, γιατί να μην το πούμε.
Δεν ξέρω αν είναι σωστό το μαρτυρία.
Είναι ιστορική μαρτυρία. Είναι ιστορική μαρτυρία και είναι η αλήθεια. Δεν είναι ιστορική μόνο, είναι η αλήθεια.
Κοιτάξτε, αυτό το θέμα, επειδή φέρω μια υπεύθυνη θέση στο στον Νότο, δεν θα ήθελα να θίξω τώρα το θρησκευτικό συναίσθημα.
Η αλήθεια λέτε.
Θα βγει κάποιος θα πει εντάξει.
Λέτε η αλήθεια θίγει τελικά ή ανυψώνει το θρησκευτικό συναίσθημα.
Ανυψώνει, αλλά αυτή τη στιγμή όμως.
Μάθετε την αλήθεια, λέει ο Ιησούς, και η αλήθεια ελευθερώσει μας. Δεν είναι καθαγιασμένο το φως. Δεν καθαγιάζεται.
Σίγουρα.
Θέλω να σας ρωτήσω εγώ. Μπαίνετε μέσα, το ανάβετε πάνω από τον Πανάγιο Τάφο και φεύγετε για να το βρει αναμένο ο Πατριάρχης. Είναι έτσι ή όχι?
Έτσι.
Είναι έτσι. Είναι έτσι. Ανάβετε και το καντήλι των φυλάκων.
Υπάρχουν δύο καντήλες. Μια φέρος και φύλακας και μια δεύτερη.
Και μια δεύτερη, την οποία την ανάβετε και αυτή. Αλλά το καντήλι που ανάβετε,
Ναι, μπορεί και κάποιος να το πει και σαν δικλείδα.
Και σαν δικλείδα.
Και εκείνη τη στιγμή μας είπε τι ακριβώς έπρεπε να κάνουμε μετά για όλη την τελετή του Αγίου Φωτός.
Άρα δηλαδή σας είπε το μυστικό το 2000.
2000.
Το 2000, ο Δανιήλ, ο μακαριστός Δανιήλ.
Τι έπρεπε ακριβώς να κάνουμε με την καντήλα.
Σε ποιους το είπε, σε πολλούς?
Το είπε σε μένα και ήταν και τότε ήταν εφημέριος στον Πατήρ Νεκτάριος που είναι τώρα καμαράς του Πατριαρχείου.
Μέχρι εκείνη τη στιγμή τι πιστεύατε?
Εντάξει, λογικό ήταν. Όλη την τελετή που γινόταν μέσα, εντάξει, κάθε διακονητής που είναι στον Πανάγιο Τάφο και θα υπηρετήσει μπορεί να καταλάβει, δεν χρειάζεται.
Ναι, ξέρατε όμως ότι ξέρατε ακριβώς και τη λεπτομέρεια ότι πρέπει να την ανάψει ο σκευοφύλακας στην καντήλα, ή νομίζατε κι εσείς όπως πολλοί ότι μπαίνει αναμένη μέσα?
Αναμένω γιατί φαίνεται αν μπαίνει αναμένη.
Άρα δηλαδή όταν σας το είπε ο Δανιήλ δεν νιώσατε έκπληξη?
Όχι, εντάξει, απλώς επιβεβαίωση.
Επιβεβαίωση. Μπορείτε να μου περιγράψετε τα συναισθήματά σας, πώς νιώσατε? Ήταν κάτι που για σας η πίστη σας μειώθηκε?
Όχι καθόλου. Υπάρχουν δύο, πώς ανάβει η Αγία Καντήλα και πώς αγιάζεται. Υπάρχουν δύο διαφορετικά.
Το πώς ανάβει όμως δεν είναι θαύμα.
Όχι, εννοείται.
Αυτό λοιπόν δεν μπορούμε να το πούμε?
Ναι, μπορούμε να το πούμε.
Μπορούμε να το πούμε αυτό.
Πολλοί το λένε. Και πολλοί το διαδίδουν κάποιοι ελεύθερα και εδώ και χρόνια, όχι.
Πιστεύετε πως παρόλο το ότι μπαίνετε μέσα, ανάβετε το καντήλι, το βάζετε σβηστό, το ανάβετε και φεύγετε, ο Πατριάρχης, ο κάθε Πατριάρχης, έχει πάρει τα μέτρα του έτσι ώστε 1 στο εκατομμύριο έχει πηγή φωτιάς πάνω του?
Δεν γνωρίζω τώρα. Κατά την εκτίμησή του σίγουρα κάτι θέλει.
Κατά την εκτίμηση.
Για να εκδίδουμε κάτι, αν πάει στραβά κάτι, δεν ξέρω τι.
Κατά την εκτίμησή σας σίγουρα. Ναι. Για να μπορέσει να βγάλει το φως στον κόσμο, έτσι δεν είναι?
Σίγουρα.
Δεν μπορεί να παίξει με πιθανότητες.
Σίγουρα. Εντάξει, δεν μπορούμε. Είναι γνωστό είναι. Ο κάθε χριστιανός θα καταλαβαίνει τι ακριβώς γίνεται. Δεν μπορούμε να πούμε τώρα πηγαίνουμε στον Πανάγιο Τάφο και κάνουμε θαύμα. Πηγαίνει ο Πατριάρχης, ο κάστος Πατριάρχης μας στον Πανάγιο Τάφο και προσεύχεται και ανάβει η φλόγα μόνη του. Είναι κάποια πράγματα που δεν στέκουν με τη λογική. Άλλο το θαύμα που θα βιώσει κάποιος άνθρωπος και θα δει προσωπικά και άλλο τώρα το ακριβώς πώς ξεκινάει όλη η τελετή.
Άρα λοιπόν, θαύμα είναι ο καθαγιασμός, φυσική διαδικασία είναι το άναμα της φλόγας.
Ναι.
Έτσι. Άρα τα ξεχωρίζουμε δύο διαφορετικά πράγματα.
Στα Ιεροσόλυμα πολλές φορές μέχρι σήμερα έχει γίνει αντικείμενο συζητήσεων αλλά και αντιπαραθέσεων μεταξύ επιστημόνων και θεολόγων. Στο βιβλίο του δημοσιογράφου Δημήτρη Αλικάκου καταγράφονται μαρτυρίες αγιοταφητών που ανατρέπουν τη θεωρία του θαύματος, προκαλώντας την αντίδραση του Πατριαρχείου.
One thing I never mentioned, I should mention now. What you just saw was the television station ANT1. Before I let the video keep going, I'd like to talk about that last statement that Anchor just made, that the Patriarchate of Jerusalem came out with this statement. Long before Alikakos had secured any interview, one of the first things that he did was contact the Patriarchate of Jerusalem. He was connected to Aristarchos, who is the secretary of the Patriarchate. This is the man in command after the Patriarch himself. After many phone calls between Aristarchos and Alikakos regarding the miraculous nature of the Holy Fire, Alikakos was ensured that the website of the Patriarchate did not have any mention of the word miracle. Upon checking for himself, he saw that the website indeed had the phrase miracle, so Alikakos sent an email to the Patriarchate himself. Later, Aristarchos personally confirmed to Alikakos that the website would omit any mention of the word miracle. On June 23, 2018, the website indeed changed and no longer had any mention of miracle. Here is an archive of the website from June 22nd, the day before it changed, which says things like, "It is a true miracle which admits no dispute. It is necessary to emphasize that the heterodox have previously inspected the entire interior of the holy edicule to certify that there is no lit lamp or other source of light. The heterodox conduct an inspection to ensure that he has nothing on him that could create suspicion or raise doubts. After the prayer, he places the cotton in the Holy Sepulchre and it miraculously ignites. With it, he lights the candles and exits the holy edicule. The important thing is that the holy fire has no heat for a few minutes. That is, if one touches the holy fire with their hands, they will not be burned. It is truly one of the greatest miracles of Christianity, which is repeated every year on Holy Saturday. All of what I just read was omitted, and now the word ceremony was used instead of miracle on the official website of the Patriarchate. When Alikakos first had come out with this book, the Patriarchate made an announcement. They made a statement saying, "The response of the Patriarchate of Jerusalem to the contents of Mr. Dimitris Alikakos' book on the subject of the Holy Fire is that which was already given to him by the Chief Secretariat prior to the publication of this book. Namely, that the official position of the Patriarchate regarding the ceremony of the Holy Fire is that which is contained in the program of the Holy Fire ceremony of Holy Saturday each year on the Patriarchate's website. In the studies of the Holy Sepulchre Fathers, and specifically of the Blessed Holy Sepulchre Father, Father Callistus Miliara, in the magazine Neacion, and in whatever is derived from Holy Scripture and the Fathers of the Church." So what I just played from the television station where they said the Patriarchate had made an official statement after Alikakos' book release, this was it. So imagine you are sitting in your home, this television station comes on, you hear these great things about how the Holy Fire has been debunked by this journalist. You're also going to see how this news station plays Isidorus' own testimony about how he lights it, which is what I'm about to show. You're going to be curious. Well, I thought it was a miracle. This is what I learned. So you're going to go see what the Patriarchate of Jerusalem said, and this is what you're going to find. They're going to direct you to their website. You're going to go to their website, and you're going to find, wait a minute, the word miracle isn't there. So within the same day, after ANT1 played, the Patriarchate of Jerusalem made another statement. But before I tell you what statement they made, let's keep watching what the television station said.
Η έρευνα του δημοσιογράφου Δημήτρη Αλικάκου έρχεται να ταράξει τα δεδομένα για τον τρόπο που ανάβει η ακίνητη κανδύλα. Το απόσπασμα που θα παρακολουθήσετε μας παραχώρησε ο ίδιος από τη συνέντευξή του με τον ενενεργεία σκευοφύλακα του Παναγίου Τάφου.
Να το πούμε, γιατί να μην το πούμε.
Δεν ξέρω, σωστό το λέω.
Ένα ακόμη μεγάλο θέμα που επισημαίνεται στο βιβλίο είναι η αλλαγή στην ιστοσελίδα του Πατριαρχείου Ιεροσολύμων σε ό,τι αφορά την τελετή του Αγίου Φωτός. Μέχρι τις 22 Ιουνίου 2018 το κείμενο του Πατριαρχείου γράφει όπως βλέπετε:
«Πραγματικός είναι εν εκ των μεγαλύτερων θαυμάτων της χριστιανοσύνης, το οποίο επαναλαμβάνεται κάθε χρόνο το Μέγα Σάββατον». Την επόμενη μέρα το κείμενο αλλάζει και πλέον έχει απαλληφθεί η λέξη θαύμα. «Δάκρυα χαράς χύνους οι πάντες, αναλογιζόμενοι ότι όντως εισή θεατές σεβασμίας και ιεράς τελετής». Επικοινωνήσαμε με το Πατριαρχείο Ιεροσολύμων αναζητώντας απάντηση. Πράγματι, ο αρχιγραμματέας Αρίσταρχος επιβεβαίωσε την αλλαγή στο site με την εξήγηση πως το προηγούμενο κείμενο για το φως της Αναστάσεως δεν εξέφραζε το Πατριαρχείο. Ακολούθησε η επίσημη ανακοίνωση των Ιεροσολύμων για τους ισχυρισμούς του βιβλίου. Η απάντηση του Πατριαρχείου Ιεροσολύμων στα περιεχόμενα του βιβλίου του κυρίου Δημητρίου Αλικάκου επί του θέματος του Αγίου Φωτός είναι η δοθήσα ήδη εις εκείνον εκ της αρχιγραμματείας πρώτης δημοσιεύσεως του βιβλίου αυτού ότι η επίσημος θέση του Πατριαρχείου για την τελετή του Αγίου Φωτός είναι εκείνη η οποία περιέχεται στο πρόγραμμα της τελετής του Αγίου Φωτός του Μεγάλου Σαββάτου εκάστου έτους στην ιστοσελίδα του Πατριαρχείου.
This was not a good look at all. People were going to be scandalized. So the same day, another statement came from the Patriarchate. The tone entirely shifted. It was no longer, hey, just, check our website. That's our official position. Look at what they said now. This is a letter from the Chief Secretariat of the Patriarchate of Jerusalem to television station ANT1 TV regarding the published book of Mr. Alikakos. Dear sirs, regarding the issue that arose due to the impending release by Ekremis Publications of a book by journalist Dimitris Alikakos titled The Redemption on the Holy Fire, we state the following. A. The author visited the Patriarchate of Jerusalem and met with its officials initially to address his spiritual needs and subsequently as part of research into the history of our Patriarchate. B. Any video recorded interviews he claims to possess took place unlawfully without the knowledge of his interlocutors and of course without their necessary consent. C. From the videos that have come to light, the fraudulent compilation, or montage, with the aim of achieving the quote-unquote desired outcome is evident, an act which, besides being morally reprehensible, is also criminally actionable. D. All necessary legal actions have already been initiated with Google to remove the disputed videos from the internet as products of illegal interception, which contain misleading and defamatory content and defame individuals and the truths of our faith. In any case, we expressly reserve all our legal rights regarding the necessary judicial actions that will inevitably take place. E. The contents of the disputed book are a product of fictitious stories invented by the author with the obvious aim of scandalizing the faithful and gaining financial profit from the book's sales. The choice to release the disputed book at this particular time in the midst of Holy and Great Lent, and as our church approaches Holy Pascha, proves beyond any doubt the deeper motives of the author and the publishing house. F. The official position of the Patriarchate of Jerusalem regarding the ceremony of the Holy Fire is that which is contained in the program of the Holy Fire ceremony on Holy Saturday each year on the Patriarchate's website, in the studies of the Holy Sepulchre Fathers, and specifically of the Blessed Holy Sepulchre Father Callistos Miliara in the magazine Nia Sion, and in whatever is derived from Holy Scripture and the Fathers of the Church. Respectfully, Aristarchos, Archbishop of Constantina, Elder Chief Secretary. You could tell immediately the tone was shifted after ANT1 came out with those findings of Alikakos. On June 4th, 2019, Archbishops Aristarchos, the one who gave out this statement, and Isidore, the one who we just showed as admitting he personally lights the Holy Fire, they filed a criminal complaint against journalist Alikakos and his publishing house, alleging defamation, breach of confidentiality, of oral communication, and violation of personal data. On July 2nd, Alikakos was served a lawsuit by the Patriarchate of Jerusalem as a legal entity, quote-unquote, legally represented by his beatitude, the Patriarch of Jerusalem Theophilus. On August 7th, he was served with 2 more lawsuits, one from Isidoros, another one from Aristarchos. On December 12th, both Isidoros and Aristarchos filed a complaint with the Hellenic Data Protection Authority against Alikakos. Mysteriously, however, the Patriarch later withdrew the lawsuit. Their legal counsel declined to provide an explanation, citing attorney-client privilege. Alikakos' lawyer offered only a brief remark. Quote-unquote, a possible explanation is legal instinct. In other words, once the initial emotions had subsided, it may have become clear that this was not a case they were likely to win. The Patriarch knew better than to bring attention to this case because once the findings are out, there is no coming back from this. So, Patriarch Theophilus would rather have Isidoros and Aristarchos personally go through with their own lawsuits instead. In January 2021, Alikakos received a summons. He immediately requested to be tried, so that not only he could defend himself, he could use this as a chance to, in his words, expose their timeless falsehoods. Alikakos' suspicion was correct. This is exactly what would happen when he was tried. On November 2nd of 2021, of the 2 remaining lawsuits against Alikakos, they split and summoned the plaintiffs for new hearings. The summons was issued to Alikakos on June 10, 2022, and the trial was scheduled to October 20, 2022. It was first postponed to March 15, 2023, then October 30th, 2023, then finally it was postponed to March 20, 2024. Alikakos' patience could be tested, as he had already secured a victory against Isidore and Aristarchos. Their complaint to take down the videos to Google was dismissed. On May 27, 2022, the decision was issued, and in it says, furthermore, it is even less probable that the said journalist was filming the applicant without his consent. On the contrary, from the latter's address to the camera and his question to the journalist, should we say it on camera? It appears that the latter knew he was being filmed, contrary to what he alleges in his application. For these reasons, rules in the presence of the parties dismisses the application. Keep in mind, from this statement from Google, we also find that one of the things that Aristarchos and Isidoros argued was that Alikakos had revealed Isidoros' dental problems to the whole world. This was one of the reasons they wanted the videos taken down. When the trial finally started, Isidoros was not present. We can theorize why. It might have not have been a good look, especially because of the video captured of him specifically. So it was really just Aristarchos there. On October 25th of last year, that is 3 months ago of me recording this video, the trial transcripts from 2024 were made available. Let's take a look at some very important points from the transcript. Point number 1. Aristarchos refused to answer whether the holy fire was lit naturally. When asked, could the light be from an oil lamp on the Holy Sepulchre, yes or no? Aristarchos could have clearly said, no, it's descended miraculously, this is a true miracle. But instead, Aristarchos answered, I told you, this question you are asking me pertains to Mr. Alikakos' publications and the discussions we had regarding which I am prevented from answering by the seal of confession. When challenged that it's already public, saying, but they were published in the book. They are not secrets. These have been published in the book. Aristarchos answered, all right, they have been published in the book, but I told you that I uphold what I promised. Point number 2 that needs to be mentioned from the transcript. Aristarchus admits he can't confirm it's a miracle, and he redefines what miracle is. When asked, ultimately, what is your position? What do you maintain? Is the lighting miraculous, or is the holy fire lit naturally? The secretary of the Patriarchate of Jerusalem answered, my apologies, I have not entered the Holy Sepulchre and do not know to tell you anything about what occurs within the edicule of the Holy Sepulchre. For that, you should ask the Patriarch. Then they asked Aristarchus, can you affirm that it is a miracle? Aristarchus answered, it depends on how we define the miracle. He then gives his definition. As a Holy Sepulchre brother who has lived there for 60 years, I see the miracle. I see it in the thousands of people who congregate there. Faith and joy. The hope that the reception of the holy fire gives them. Let me point out how ridiculous this is. All of a sudden, he's a Holy Sepulchre brother for 60 years. And then earlier, he just doesn't know what happens in the edicule of the Holy Sepulchre. You should ask the Patriarch. It's not for me to answer. Really, there is a miracle, but you have to understand. It's a miracle of faith and joy. It's the hope in the reception of the holy fire. That's the miracle. It's hope. This is like when you break down to a child that Santa isn't real. But then you say, no, there's a Christmas miracle. It's the hope on the child and the present. What is this? What happened to Alikakos' finding being fictitious stories? Now we're just getting a redefinition of the word miracle. Point number 3 that needs to be pointed out from the transcript. Aristarchus says he doesn't know the key point that there's a lamp before the Patriarch. He just doesn't know that detail. When asked, who enters inside the Holy Sepulchre? Aristarchus answered, inside the Holy Sepulchre, the Patriarch enters. Aristarchus was then asked, does anyone else enter before the Patriarch? And then Aristarchus answers, I do not know these things because I do not have that responsibility. Remember, this is something you can confirm by opening YouTube and watching the broadcast every single year. You can see the sacristan go in. But all of a sudden, the Holy Sepulchre brother, who's been there for 60 years, who is the spokesman of the Jerusalem Patriarchate and the second in command after the Patriarch, I don't know. I don't have that responsibility. Then when Aristarchus was asked, do you perhaps know if the Scuphalax enters the Holy Sepulchre before the Patriarch? Aristarchus answers, no, I do not know. Then when Aristarchus was asked, do you perhaps know if Isidore introduces a lamp into the Holy Sepulchre before the Patriarch enters? Aristarchus answers, no, I do not know. Let's pretend Aristarchus is telling the truth. Why are you even here? Why are you representing the Jerusalem Patriarchate? Anyone who can watch the broadcast knows. If you don't even know this simple detail, how can you tell us anything about Alikakos' findings? Point number 4 that needs to be brought up from the transcript. When the defendant was reading the cite text into record, he says, simultaneously the lamp, which is used in the sacred ceremony, is carried in procession from the cell where it is kept near the holy deposition by our sacristan. So they're citing the text website that, remember, Aristarchus made 2 statements after Alikakos' book came out, telling people to go read the website. Look how Aristarchus answers. I did not have the time, due to my obligations, to read, and I have not read what is written on the Patriarchate's website. I do not know who wrote these things, and when you spoke to me, I showed every willingness to correct the text and present a better picture of the matter. So let me get this straight. When the book comes out, you translate your statement in 5 different languages, saying, check my website, and then when you're finally asked about it in court, yeah, I never read that website. I don't know what happens in the Holy Edicule. I've been here for 60 years, and yeah, I'm the spokesman of the Patriarch, but I don't know this stuff. I don't know this stuff that you can easily verify on YouTube. Point number 5 that has to be shown from the transcript. And I have to interject here my own personal thoughts. It genuinely seems to me as if they were hoping we would have never read this transcript. But anyways, point number 5, the lamp and no miracle statements exist publicly with no penalty. When Aristarchus was asked, he, Theophanes, states that the holy fire is lit from the lamp and no miracle exists. Are you aware of this? Aristarchus answers, my respect and esteem for his eminence Theophanes on this matter. I take a different stance and he takes a different stance. Then when asked, is what he says slanderous? Has he been expelled? Has he received any penalty? Aristarchus answers, no. Point number 6 that has to be brought up from the transcript. Aristarchus won't confirm or deny the unsleeping lamp claim in court. When asked, here he wrote, that the oil lamp remains lit in the Holy Sepulchre. Did you say that? Aristarchus answers, no, I state that I do not speak on this matter because I also include this under the confidentiality of the sacrament of confession. And when the court presses, we need to see if this was actually said or not. Aristarchus answers, I cannot testify because the confidentiality of the sacrament of confession. Those are 6 main points from the transcript, but let's also talk about some of the sworn testimonies, both in support of Aristarchos and in support of Alikakos. In support of Alikakos, the former sacristan we showed earlier, former Archbishop of Ascalon, Nicephorus, he provided a sworn statement where he confirms what he said on video in defense of Alikakos, that this is not a miracle and that he personally lit it for 4 consecutive years. In support of Aristarchos, a dragoman was summoned and he swore on his priesthood that he never saw Alikakos' camera ever in his life. The reason he's saying this is he wants to support Aristarchos' case that Alikakos was being deceptive about his profession. Now, let's assume Alikakos was actually doing that, which he wasn't. What does that have to do with the holy fire? What does that have to do? If he recorded you without your consent, admitting it's not a miracle, then it's not a miracle, whether it was by your consent or not. But I'm just gonna leave this photo here and you judge if he was familiar with a camera. Another testimony was made in favor of Aristarchos from Archbishop Aristobulus, and in it he complained that Isidorus' dental problems were revealed by Alikakos. Remember, this was also in the complaint sent to Google as one of the reasons asking for the deletion of this famous historical video where Isidorus admits to him personally lighting the holy fire. That certainly must be it. This whole fuss was really just over Alikakos' personal gripes of exposing Isidorus' dental problems. That's it. That's why they made that statement, trying to discredit Alikakos' findings. He's so evil for wanting to reveal Isidorus' dental issues. That has to be it. Now let's talk about what the court said. The court said, during the aforementioned telephone conversations, a main topic of discussion, among others, was the method of the lighting of the holy fire. The latter, with the consent of the Patriarch of Jerusalem, proceeded to correct the text on the Patriarchate's website where the word miracle was initially mentioned, and another text of 1910 was uploaded, which did not contain the word miracle. It was not proven that the first defendant concealed his journalistic capacity and investigation he was conducting. They state that, primarily as a believer and secondarily as a journalist, he asked me to record our conversation and I did not refuse. It is proven that the first complainant and party supporting the prosecution indeed assured him during the aforementioned discussions that the lamp is placed lit in the Holy Sepulchre by the sacristan on Holy Saturday. Although the party supporting the prosecution claims in his complaint that the aforementioned conversation did not take place, before the court he did not support what was stated in his complaint and did not testify that the aforementioned facts are false, but repeatedly stated that what was said falls under the secrecy of the mystery of confession. The accusation that the latter revealed conversations that took place during confession does not fall within the jurisdiction of this court. It is fully proven that the aforementioned fact was indeed stated. It is indeed proven that the second complainant admitted that the lighting of the lamp in the Holy Sepulchre on Holy Saturday occurs naturally. As for the court's conclusion, it is proven that the lighting is done by him naturally, i.e. with a lighter. What the first defendant states on his personal social media Facebook page is true. Given the truth of the aforementioned facts, the first defendant must be acquitted. The book presents the complainants as champions of truth, as courageous clergy who found the boldness to reveal to the world the process. Alikakos acted exclusively out of justified journalistic interest with the sole purpose of informing the public on a matter of general interest. It was not established that the first defendant recorded the content of his telephone communication. The aforementioned data are directly derived from their automatic storage on modern telephone devices. The aforementioned videotaped conversation occurred with the approval and consent of the second complainant. With that aside, we also have the court's response to the lawsuits. Here's what they say. On the website YouTube, the first defendant presented, with regard to the plaintiff, the true content of the interview. The first defendant stated that the view he expressed concerning the lighting of the holy fire is confessed by the very protagonists of the miracle themselves. The claim, namely, that priests who participated in the ceremony supported the first defendant's view, is true. The first defendant stated that the protagonists of the ceremony affirmed that it is not a miracle. This claim, namely that priests who participated in the ceremony confirmed that the lighting does not occur by miracle, is true. The claim of the first defendant, namely that the plaintiff said that he himself lights 2 lamps, is true. The claim of the first defendant, namely that the plaintiff expressed that position, is true. This claim, beyond the fact that it does not concern the plaintiff, is true. This claim of the first defendant, namely that there were testimonies of clergy supporting the above position, beyond the fact that it does not individualize the plaintiff, is true. The claim of the first defendant, namely that the plaintiff told him that he lights 2 lamps at the Holy Sepulchre, is true. In the remaining instances, true claims are contained. Furthermore, as to the latter, no form of deception of the plaintiff by the first defendant nor extraction of answers was shown. The first defendant had not concealed his journalistic capacity. Devices for recording image and sound were placed in visible locations and, therefore, perceptible to the plaintiff, who knew of the recording, its purpose, and its future use, and had consented to it by participating in the interview which was being recorded. The plaintiff's claim that although the recording devices were placed in a visible location, he had not consented to their use and believed that no recording was taking place is deemed unconvincing. From this, it is confirmed that the plaintiff was aware of the recording of his conversation with the first defendant. From this, it is further proven that the plaintiff knew that the interview and its content would be disclosed to third parties. Therefore, the lawsuit, insofar as it concerns the alleged defamation of the plaintiff through publication of the video on the website YouTube and posts on the social media platform Facebook, that is, insofar as it is concerned before this court, is to be dismissed as substantively unfounded. Accordingly, the lawsuit, insofar as it is brought before this court against the first defendant, must be rejected. Rejects this lawsuit. Rejects the lawsuit insofar as it is brought before this court against the first defendant. Orders the plaintiff to pay the legal costs of the first defendant, which are set at 1,100 euros. It was settled then. The process of censorship by the Patriarchate of Jerusalem had failed. In August 2024, the Patriarchate of Jerusalem quietly deleted every official announcement it had published against journalist Dimitris Alikakos and his research on the so-called miracle of the Holy Fire. No response was given, no refutation. Now the censorship was to their own claims. Let's remember what those announcements were. On March 18, 2019, the Chief Secretariat of the Patriarchate issued a formal letter attacking Alikakos personally in response to his book Redemption on the Holy Fire. The statement accused him of fabricating stories and manipulating video material in an effort to discredit his findings. That announcement was not minor. It was published in 5 languages: Greek, Russian, Arabic, English, and Romanian, ensuring wide international circulation of the accusations. The goal was clear: to undermine his moral and professional credibility and, through that, to weaken the impact of his findings. In both the criminal court and the civil courts, Alikakos was vindicated. The claims that his videos were edited or that his book was a product of fictional invention were rejected. On May 23, 2024, Alikakos formally served the Patriarchate with a legal notice demanding written retraction and deletion of the defamatory statements within 10 days. There was no response. A lawsuit followed on July 10. Then, in mid-August 2024, something significant happened. Every announcement concerning Alikakos disappeared from the Patriarchate's official website in all languages. There was no clarification, no explanation, no apology, just a deletion. They wanted people to just forget as if this ever happened, as if they ever accused Alikakos, his own person, of being deceptive. It's clear what this is for the Patriarchate of Jerusalem. This is one of the most embarrassing things that have ever happened to them. They don't want anyone to know about this. They deleted their own statements against Alikakos. What I'm telling you right now, they would much rather keep it hidden. As we've already seen, the Patriarchate had also removed references to the Holy Fire as a miracle from its official descriptions following his research. But that's not it. They deleted their own section on the Holy Fire on their own website. It's not there anymore. The public accusations are gone. The court rulings remain. That contrast is so loud, especially with all the evidence I provided earlier. All of the testimony from those former sacristan, the testimony from the one who goes in and gives the Holy Fire to the people in 2001, the video evidence of a light already there before the Patriarch entering. All of that is further strengthened that the Jerusalem Patriarchate tried, failed, and tried to hide their failure. There was never any rebuttal to this day. No counter evidence. There was no formal theological defense. There was nothing. There was just a dismissal, pretending as if this episode never occurred. Instead, the Jerusalem Patriarchate had to let its sister churches answer. One quote-unquote representative of the Russian Orthodox Church responded as follows: "For us, it is sufficient that the Patriarchate of Jerusalem officially protested against all these reports, while the decision taken by the secular court of Athens is its internal affair. However, we remember that Greece recently adopted, for example, a law legalizing same-sex marriages, so there's nothing strange in all this. These are phenomena of the same order." That was the answer. A court ruling equated with contemporary political legislation, a judicial decision, the testimony recorded on video, all of that was reduced to a cultural symptom. You know, it's just like them legalizing same-sex stuff. Us Christians, we reject homosexuality, so don't get any doubts or anything about how the court sided in favor of Alikakos. St. Augustine once said, "Since you see, therefore, that these things are so, why do you provoke odium against us on the ground of the imperial decrees which are in force against you, when you have yourselves done all this before we followed your example? And now, what other law is in force against your party than that decision of the elder Constantine, to which your forefathers of their own choice appealed? If you are dissatisfied with the decrees of emperors, who were the first to compel the emperors to set these in array against you? For you have no more reason for crying out against the Catholic Church because of the decrees of emperors against you than those men would have had for crying out against Daniel, who after his deliverance were thrown in to be devoured by the same lions by which they first sought to have him destroyed. As it is written, the king's wrath is as the roaring of a lion. These slanderous enemies insist that Daniel should be thrown into the den of lions. His innocence prevailed over their malice. He was taken from the den unharmed, and they, being cast into it, perished. In like manner, your forefathers cast Sicelanius and his companions to be destroyed by the king's wrath. And when, by their innocence, they were delivered from this, you yourselves now suffer from these kings what your party wished them to suffer. As it is written, whoever digs a pit for his neighbor shall himself fall therein. You have therefore no ground for complaint against us." In 1845, a Russian monk named Parthenius traveled to Jerusalem. While there, Orthodox Christians recounted to him a story about an inscription near the entrance of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. An inscription he himself admitted he could not read. The story he recorded retold a supposed event from 1579. According to the tradition he heard, in the 16th century, the Armenians had secured the favor of the Ottoman authorities and obtained permission to enter the Church of the Holy Sepulchre alone for the Holy Fire ceremony, while the Greek Orthodox Patriarch and the Orthodox faithful were shut outside. Confident that the miracle would appear for them, the Armenians entered and waited. But as the appointed hour passed, nothing happened. Their confidence turned to fear, and then to humiliation. Outside, the Orthodox Patriarch stood praying beside one of the marble pillars near the entrance. Suddenly, the pillar split open, and the holy fire burst forth from the crack. The Patriarch lit his candles from the flame. The Orthodox rejoiced, and the Armenians, still inside the church, were left without the miracle they had tried to claim for themselves. The earliest extant form of this story appears much later than the alleged event itself. It is preserved in a Jerusalem pilgrimage text associated with Ananias and Akakios, found in the manuscript of Munich, Codex Graecus 346, which was copied in around 1634. In this earliest version, the miracle of the split column is described, but there is no mention of the Armenians attempting the ceremony or failing to receive the holy fire. A later version of the tradition appears in Simeon's Proskyneterion of Jerusalem, which was printed in Vienna in 1749. Yet even there, the account still lacks any explicit reference to the Armenians. The explicitly anti-Armenian version of the story does not appear until the 19th century, when it is recorded in retellings such as the account attributed to Parthenius. This development reveals how the story evolved in popular tradition. Today, this polemical form of the narrative is widely circulated and frequently used as a rhetorical weapon against the Armenian Apostolic Church, and by extension the Oriental Orthodox Communion, despite the fact that the earliest surviving versions of the story do not contain this element at all. It is important to challenge popular lay traditions surrounding the ceremony. Not only those fashioned against Oriental Orthodoxy, but even those invoked in defense of the miracle's authenticity. One claim you will hear constantly is that the Patriarch is searched before entering the tomb. Even if that were true, what would it prove? All the evidence points instead to the sacristan, the one who carries the holy lamp into the tomb, as the person who lights it. Is he searched? Is the inside of his lamp inspected? The answer is no. More importantly, the claim itself is irrelevant. The Patriarch does not light the lamps according to the standard procedure we learned about. He simply finds them already lit by the sacristan when he enters. Whether he is searched or not, therefore proves nothing about how the flame appears. Remember, he's going inside to find it already lit. So what if he has nothing on him?
Να ρωτήσω κάτι άλλο, επειδή το αναφέρατε. Ας πάρουμε το πρώτο. Ψάχνουν τον ισχυρισμό ότι ψάχνουν τον Πατριάρχη.
Ναι.
Ψάχνει κάποιος τον Πατριάρχη.
Κανείς δεν ψάχνει τον Πατριάρχη.
Ήσασταν εσείς μπροστά, το βλέπετε αυτό.
Τόσα χρόνια. Και
ψάχνει κανένας και σαν δραγουμάνο. Α, έχετε κάνει και δραγουμάνο.
Έχει κάνει και δραγουμάνο πριν γίνω και ο φύλακας του Πατριάρχη.
Είδατε ποτέ με τα μάτια σας κάποιος ή κάποιοι να ψάχνουν τον
Πατριάρχη? Κοιτάξτε, αυτό θα ήταν και ας πούμε προσβλητικό για τον Πατριάρχη. Δηλαδή υποπτεύονται τον Πατριάρχη ότι ένας Πατριάρχης μπορεί να κάνει απάτη και να πάρει σπίρτα και να ανάψει, ας πούμε, κάτι άλλο. Δηλαδή, εγώ δεν το δεχόμουν αυτό, να πει κάποιος. Και μάλιστα τι λένε, στην ιστοσελίδα έλεγε ότι ψάχνουν τον Πατριάρχη οι ετερόδοξοι και οι αλλόθρησκοι. Αν είναι δυνατόν ποτέ να πιστέψουμε, να δεχτούμε κάτι τέτοιο, να μας κάνουν έρευνα αυτοί. Και ποιοι είναι αυτοί? Αυτή είναι μια δικιά μας τελετή, η τελετή του Αγίου Φωτός. Κανείς δεν παίρνει μέρος άλλος, ούτε οι Αρμένοι ούτε κανένας άλλος. Οι Αρμένοι, απλώς ο αντιπρόσωπος των Αρμενίων, μπαίνει στον Πανάγιο Τάφο και παίρνει το πρώτος από τον Πατριάρχη το Άγιο Φως και το δίνει στους δικούς τους, τους Αρμενίους. Λοιπόν, δεν έχουν καμιά άλλη συμμετοχή, ούτε αυτοί ούτε κανένας άλλος.
The repeated claim that the Patriarch is thoroughly searched is not only irrelevant, it is simply false. To see this, we can turn to testimony from those who participate in the ceremony. Former sacristans and even the secretary of the Patriarchate who sued Alikakos. They explicitly deny that such a search occurs. So remember, even if there was a search, who cares? But there isn't one in the first place. This just shows how much this lay tradition has evolved. Let's take a quick break and talk about some of the history of the Holy Fire. If we start with the earliest evidence, the first source people usually point to is Egeria, writing in the 380s. But what she describes is not the later miracle claim in its developed form. She says that at the evening lucernarium in the Anastasis, all the candles and lamps are lit, and that the flame is not brought in from outside but comes from within the inner cave, where a lamp is kept burning continually. Sound familiar? In other words, the earliest testimony is about a liturgical lighting rite drawing from an already burning lamp inside the tomb complex, a unsleeping lamp, not a miraculous annual descent of fire. That matters because there's a major gap between this late 4th century description and the later Holy Fire tradition as people know it today. The developed miracle story is generally traced much later, with clearer attestation only in the 9th century, especially in the account of Bernard the monk, who describes lamps in the Holy Sepulchre being miraculously kindled during the Paschal ceremony. Even the Church of the Holy Sepulchre's own historical summary places the more detailed accounts in the 9th century. So, historically, the trajectory seems to be this. First, a normal Jerusalem lamp lighting rite in Egeria, then centuries later, explicit reports of a miracle. That does not prove what happened one way or the other, but it does mean that the earliest evidence does not describe the miracle in the later sense. The earliest clear reference to any miracle appears first in the 9th century with Bernard the monk. And even there, the story is still relatively simple. The people chant Kyrie eleison until an angel lights the lamps hanging over the Lord's sepulchre, and the light is then distributed to the crowd. By the 10th century, the tradition has already become more elaborate. Muslim and Christian witnesses describe the tomb being closed, the crowd waiting outside in prayer, and a white flame appearing from within. The miracle is now tied to a locked shrine, public anticipation, and official oversight. By the time of the Crusades, the Holy Fire had become more than a miracle story. It had become a test of religious legitimacy. In 1101, Latin clergy reportedly failed to obtain it, while Orthodox clergy succeeded. In 1107, Abbot Daniel describes a still more developed rite. The tomb is sealed, the king and clergy stand in assigned positions, the bishop checks the tomb for light, and once the holy light appears, he opens the doors, enters the tomb, lights a taper inside, and brings the flame back out to the people. Even when medieval sources begin to mention the patriarch entering the tomb, they still do not usually describe the miracle in the later form, that is, the fire descending while he is enclosed inside. Take Fulcher of Chartres, for example, a French chaplain and chronicler of the First Crusade. In his account of 1101, the patriarch enters the sepulchre, finds no light, prays in tears, comes back out without it. Only later is he told that the light has appeared in one of the lamps inside, and then he opens the tomb again and takes the flame out to the people. In other words, even here the miracle is not yet narrated as occurring while the patriarch is inside receiving it. The same broader pattern still appears in the 14th century. Fra Niccolò de Poggibonsi, describing Jerusalem in 1346 to 1350, says that all the lamps inside the Holy Sepulchre are extinguished. The Saracens stand before the door and allow no Christian to enter, and that through the window above, he saw a dove come down and then a great light appear within the Holy Sepulchre. That is a very important detail. The miracle is still being staged as a light appearing inside a closed shrine while Christians remain outside. There is no patriarch inside waiting for the light. That reading is reinforced by Alexei Lidov, who summarizes the medieval pattern by saying that from the 9th to 14th century, the chapel was usually empty at the time of the miracle, its door sealed by Muslim guards. What seems to change in the late medieval period is not simply that clergy enter the tomb, but that the miracle is now said to occur while they are already inside. The earliest explicit witness I could verify is Paul Walther von Gunglingen in the 1480s. The historical trajectory seems clear enough. Early sources emphasize the tomb, the crowd, and the appearance of light from within, but the now familiar image of clergy inside the sepulchre at the very moment of the descent does not appear to belong to the earliest strata of the tradition. As Alexei Lidov notes, from the 9th to 14th century, the chapel was empty. The rite in its present form, where you have someone inside receiving the holy fire as it comes down, that occurs in the 15th century. So, what changed? One possible theory is that the miracle was performed using certain substances that would later get lost by the 15th century. The broader ancient and Byzantine world absolutely did know recipes for volatile incendiaries that were said to ignite when exposed to heat or sunlight. Julius Africanus describes one such mixture outright. You prepare it under the midday sun, store it in copper, smear it on objects at night, and when the sun rises, they automatically combust and burn when met with the right temperatures. A 10th century Byzantine military manual preserves the same basic idea. Add to that Plutarch's description of naphtha igniting from the mere radiance of flame, and the point becomes obvious. By the time the later form of the holy rite emerges, the wider culture had long possessed both the imagination and technical lore for dramatic self-kindling fire effects. Remember, we are told in early accounts that the tomb had an opening window where the quote-unquote Holy Spirit was seen to descend. It is just as likely, if not more probable, that the sun could descend and force combustion on these unique substances. The surrounding anastasis had numerous windows, and the tomb monument itself is described as an accessible structure with an eastern entrance. Some reconstructions, based on early pilgrims, even treat it as an open or pillared shrine rather than a fully enclosed dark chamber. Remarkably, in 1009, the sepulchre was destroyed, so when the new edicle was constructed, a new question emerged. How exactly was the miracle to occur within this altered structure? Modern reconstructions still show a conspicuous opening to the tomb, but even more striking is this. Among the many Muslim attempts to explain away the miracle, one account stands apart, because it points to a hidden architectural feature that would later be confirmed, a peculiar anomaly that survives even now. Ibn al-Jawzi in the 13th century wrote, "In the middle of the church is a dome with a tomb in it. When Saturday night comes before dawn, they enter this dome and wash its lamps. Then have in it niches and openings concealed in the marble, and in those niches are lamps that they had already lit before dawn. When the sun sets and the place grows dark, one of the priests slip away, opens a niche in a corner of the dome where no one can see him, lights a candle from one of those lamps, and cries out, 'The light has descended and Christ is pleased.'" Notice, now we're hearing of a dome and the miracle occurring at night. Perhaps this is what would happen when the automatic combustion substances would fail. To this day, there is what looks like an opening to a marble crypt hidden behind a movable icon. There exists no record from the Eastern Orthodox explaining its purpose. That is, except one. A particularly revealing testimony comes from Bishop Porphyrius Uspensky, a founder of the Russian ecclesiastical mission in Jerusalem in 1847. In his memoirs, he recounts a conversation with the patriarchal chaplain Bishop Dionysius of Philadelphia, later the Metropolitan of Bethlehem. According to Porphyrius, Dionysius explained that the clergy once feared exposure during the rule of Ibrahim Pasha of Egypt, who governed Syria and Palestine in the early 19th century. Ibrahim had heard rumors about the miracle and decided to investigate it personally. Porphyrius records the account. In the year when the famous ruler of Syria and Palestine, Ibrahim Pasha of Egypt, was in Jerusalem, it became clear that the fire received from the Lord's tomb on Holy Saturday was not miraculous grace-given fire, but fire lit in the ordinary way. The Pasha decided to verify whether the fire truly appeared suddenly and miraculously on the lid of Christ's tomb, or whether it was lit with a sulfur match. He announced to the Patriarch's deputies that he wished to sit inside the very edicule during the ceremony and carefully observe how the fire appeared. He added that if it proved true, he would give them 5,000 purses, 2 million piastres, but if it would prove false, they must hand over all the money collected from the deceived pilgrims, and he would publish the shameful fraud in the newspapers of Europe. The deputies, Metropolitan Misael of Petra Arabia, Metropolitan Daniel of Nazareth, and Bishop Dionysius of Philadelphia met together to decide what to do. During their deliberations, Misael confessed that inside the edicule he lights the fire from a lamp hidden behind a movable marble icon of the resurrection of Christ near the Holy Sepulchre. Does that ring a bell? After this confession, it was decided to humbly ask Ibrahim not to interfere in religious matters. A dragoman was sent to explain that revealing the secrets of Christian worship would serve no purpose and would anger the Russian Emperor Nicholas. Ibrahim Pasha heard this, waved his hand, and remained silent. But from that time, the clergy of the Holy Sepulchre themselves no longer believed in the miraculous appearance of the fire. The Metropolitan added that the end of this pious falsehood can only come from God. If we tried to begin such a change ourselves, the people would tear us to pieces at the very chapel of the Holy Sepulchre. Someone can argue that it is practically impossible for this to be such a covered-up secret for so long. Surely some clergy must have come out saying it's fake. Remarkably, in the 18th century, we are told of the mindset that people have regarding the holy fire. Nikephoros Theotokos, respected by the Greek Orthodox Church as one of the teachers of the nation, received a question. Is the light appearing in the God-receiving tomb of the Savior on the Lord's Day of Pascha true or a fabrication? In his answer on January 23, 1775, after initially clarifying that what he's about to say he knows as an eyewitness to leading men of the Church of Jerusalem, he is absolutely clear about what is truly happening and why the truth is being concealed. He says, and I quote, "But I will also tell you what happens in our days, what I have heard from the leading men of that place, who are extremely trustworthy and worthy of all respect and reverence, some of whom have fallen asleep in the Lord, while others are still alive. The holy fire does not descend from heaven, nor does it spring forth from the tomb, but the hierarch appointed to this ministry enters the so-called edicule, lights a fire with his flint above the life-giving tomb, and then lights his lamps, which were previously rubbed, exits holding them, and transmits the light which has been sanctified by contact and touch with the Holy Sepulchre. The common people believe that light springs forth from the tomb, but no one dares to correct them because everyone fears suffering something terrible. As you see, therefore, there is no deception, nor do they invent or construct anything, nor do those residing there conceal what happens if asked privately, but they remain silent out of economy, whatever that means, because they cannot correct the perception of the common people. Besides, this perception causes no harm. Take a modern example. One outspoken critic to this day does not merely claim the ceremony is a hoax, he even submitted a sworn statement in court supporting Alikakos. In the trial, he was cited as someone who was permitted to hold a quote-unquote different opinion without being formally rebuked by the Patriarchate. In 2023, he publicly entered into a verbal altercation with other hierarchs, openly claiming that the holy fire was a hoax and that the faithful were being deceived. A few days later, he issued a public apology in front of others. Though he made it clear that the apology was not for the substance of what he had said, immediately he was received by the Patriarch and greeted with an embrace and a kiss. So, with that in mind, let's look at his own account of the matter, particularly what he says about whether the truth is hidden.
Λοιπόν, αυτό το είχε η Αρχαία Εκκλησία. Όταν ήταν σταυροφόροι, αυτοί που διαστρέψαν την αλήθεια, αυτοί το έκαναν θαύμα για να υποβάλουν το λαό. Όπως και χίλιες διοξασίες που κάναν και το παράθυτα και χίλια δύο πράγματα. Και έτσι και αυτό και τότε άλλαξε. Φύγανε σταυροφόροι και δυστυχώς το πήραν μας. Και επειδή ο κόσμος έχει συνηθίσει, δεν τους λένε ποτέ την αλήθεια πολύ. Αλλά η Εκκλησία ποτέ δεν λέει ψέματα. Αν διαβάσετε τώρα, να έχετε και κουράγιο τώρα, θα διαβάσω την ευχή του Αγίου Φωτός. Λέει μέσα το φως είναι συμβολισμός. Έτσι. Ο Χριστός είναι το φως. Δηλαδή το φως των ηλεκτρικών είναι πνευματικό φως. Είναι η πιο ωραία εικόνα για να παρουσίασεις την θεϊκή χάρη, τη φώτιση που λέμε κλπ. Έτσι. Λοιπόν, και εδώ είναι ακριβώς αυτό. Έτσι. Είναι η τελετή αυτή, αλλά επειδή είναι στον Πανάγιο Τάφο. Και πώς γίνεται. Το φως είναι άγιον, αλλά όπως θέλει η Εκκλησία. Το ευλογεί η Εκκλησία και γίνεται Άγιο Φως. Όπως ευλογεί, ας πούμε, το νερό και είναι διασμός, ευλογεί φυσικό φως. Είναι φυσικό φως. Έτσι, δεν κατέρχεται κανένα φως από το νερό. Αυτό είναι ειδωλατρία, είναι καταναγκασμός. Κατέρχεται η Θεία Χάρις αοράτος. Και μάλιστα μέσα στην ευχή λέει εδώ ανάπτωμεν εκ του εν τον Παναγίο Τάφο ενδελεχώς, που θα πει συνεχώς, εκαιωμένου φωτός. Θέλει να πει με άλλα λόγια της ακίνητος κανδύλα. Υπάρχει ακίνητος κανδύλα στον Παναγίο Τάφο. Διαβάζω αυτή σε μια πολύ ωραία ευχή θεολογική, σας διαβάζω, σας δώσω. Και ανάπτει από την καντήλα και το δίνει στον κόσμο. Και είναι φυσικό φως αλλαγιασμένο όπως θέλει η Εκκλησία. Θα μπορούσε να γίνει με ανοιχτό το τάφο και να μπαίνουν μέσα να αύριο το νερί, πιο ξεκάθαρα λίγο, ή να γίνει μια δήλωση εκ μέρους του Πατριαρχείου επίσημη, αλλά φοβόνται να σκανδαλίσουν τον κόσμο. Διότι όλοι δεν μπορούν να καταλάβουν. Και πάλι τα ίδια λένε και να ανοιχτό.
While Theophanes' attempt to argue that the Church has always been open about these matters is admirable, it ultimately fails, even by his own admission. The very prayer he cites as evidence that this is something public is reproduced on the Jerusalem Patriarchate's website, yet it conspicuously omits several important lines. What emerges instead is a pattern. Some bishops appear to believe that as long as the information can be disclosed when privately asked, they can still claim transparency. But at the same time, there's a clear fear of public backlash. And so the cycle repeats itself. Lawsuits are filed, passages are omitted, statements are deleted. Afterwards, these actions are framed as necessary to prevent scandal, to avoid unrest, to protect the faithful. In their own minds, they may believe that they are defending something sacred. This creates a strange tension. Partial disclosure on one hand, and on the other, a clear willingness to let the wider public continue believing a falsehood. The tension appears to have existed for centuries, and Theophanes' own words seem to reveal that same internal conflict. As I mentioned earlier, in 2023, he publicly accused his own brethren of withholding the truth and deceiving the world. What seems evident is that there is frustration even within their own ranks. Some appear deeply troubled by the idea that the world may be misled, yet they are equally reluctant to bring public scandal upon the Patriarchate, and by extension, upon what they believe to be the Church, the pillar and ground of truth. It creates a dilemma that appears to have existed for centuries, a tension between conscience and institutional loyalty. May the Lord grant them the courage and strength to act according to the truth. But they haven't, because for generations this has remained an unresolved internal struggle, one that cannot find resolution from within. The invention of cameras is the worst, yet ironically the best thing to happen. Another objection, or by this point a question someone might naturally ask, is this: why hasn't the Armenian Church exposed it? After all, aren't the Armenians present when the Patriarch receives the fire? First, the Armenians are typically in the antechamber, not inside the inner chamber of the tomb itself. Second, Armenian clergy have spoken about this issue on multiple occasions. One example is Vardapet Samuel Agoyan, who has openly described what he says he witnessed during the ceremony.
Bundles of candles in their hand, you know. We call them torches, you know, and they light their torches from the lit oil lamp on the tomb, and they go out, they distribute the light as being the holy fire.
They light it from the oil lamp?
They light it from the oil lamp that is put here, yes.
But the belief is that the fire comes from the sky.
No, we believe to miracles, but I didn't see, I've done 3 times. It didn't happen, the miracle. God does not perform miracles just to please people. When it's needed, God performs miracles only at that time.
No, I'm sorry. This is a false. I'm sorry.
I've done 3 times.
Okay, I'm sorry, but
please don't intervene.
Father, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I am responsible here.
Yeah.
This is not the truth. I'm sorry.
I've done it 3 times.
This has not happened like you say.
I've done 3 times. We, Patriarch, and myself,
I'm sorry. Stop the camera. Stop the camera.
You cannot anyway.
Stop the camera.
To be clear, we are talking about this Samuel Agoyan. Here he is in a photograph from 2002, emerging from the ceremony with the candles. He has participated in the rite multiple times, at least 3 times. In a 2021 interview, he recalled an incident during the ceremony in which the Greek Patriarch attempted to come out with the candles before him, which is normally what they usually do. According to Agoyan, the two extinguished each other's candles during an altercation and then relit their candles with a lighter again. He also describes the 2 lamps already burning inside, saying that when they enter, they simply find them lit, and they carry their own lighters just in case. That raises another important point. Not only is there no reliable evidence that the Patriarch is searched before entering, but even if such a search were conducted, there is no evidence whatsoever that the sacristan who prepares the lamps or the Armenian representative who enters the edicule are searched either. Vardapet Samuel himself is careful in how he speaks about this. He explicitly says that he does not wish to bring, in his words, shame regarding a possibility where they emerge without a fire. Remember, he cares about the honor of a church that isn't his own. That is remarkable considering how the Eastern Orthodox treat him. At the same time, he acknowledges that he and the others carry a lighter, explaining that if the lamps were not already burning when they entered, they would simply have to light the candles themselves. Whenever testimonies like this surface, defenders of the Holy Fire are quick to dismiss them as partisan attacks. Ironically, these are often the very same voices who ask, if the miracle were staged, why wouldn't the Armenians expose it, since they have every reason to do so? You're right, they do have every reason to do so, but they still cover the backs of their own enemies, and when they are asked, they are open about it. Another objection often raised is the claim that glowing spheres of light can be seen on camera during the ceremony. In reality, the flashing blue lights visible in many of these recordings are simply camera flashes. What often goes unnoticed by viewers captivated by these clips is that the so-called spheres are just light passing through the people which first emerge from openings on either side of the edicule before the Patriarch emerges. When attendants and runners carry flames to light the candles of others, we view them on these old cameras as spheres. For example, when they carry the light to the Armenian Patriarch above. The effect becomes even more misleading because many of the videos circulating online were recorded with older cameras. For example, watch the COVID-19 livestream. You won't see none of this. When these cameras lose focus, points of light no longer appear as sharp flames, but instead turn into soft circular shapes, giving the illusion of floating spheres. Last, and by far the most commonly cited proof of the holy light, is the claim that for 33 minutes it does not burn. People often point to videos of participants passing the flame over their faces, beards, and skin. But what these clips consistently have in common is that the flame is never held still. It is constantly being moved across the face and body. That matters, because a moving flame is very different from holding a steady flame in one place. It is also worth noting the physical conditions of the ceremony itself. People are packed together for hours, often on hot days, and many are already sweating heavily. Moisture on the skin can affect how the heat is felt, at least briefly, especially when the flame is being moved rather than held in one spot. So these videos, dramatic as they may appear, do not by themselves demonstrate that the fire possesses some unique or miraculous property. I challenge someone to find a single video where someone holds the fire steady on one part of their exposed body for at least 10 seconds. It does not exist. I have scoured the entire internet. It's not there. Whenever anyone does hold it steady and tries to post it, it never ends up well, because out of divine providence, take this example of a woman who held it steady on her arm. They cut it out, and we only found the truth after we saw another angle from a live television station which showed she caught on fire. There is one thing I'll grant. It is very possible that God rewards the faith of these deceived people. These are people who did not deceive themselves. They were deceived by hierarchs, people in casteocks whom they respect, and therefore God may reward their faith. Again, you have to remember, I'm not a denier of miracles here, but there is very clear placebo going on here. We have to be honest with ourselves, and at the same time, if you are truly convinced from some anecdotal evidence you heard from a friend or something that may have happened to you, it is very possible that God is rewarding you for your simplicity. But it is just as likely that it is just a placebo effect. People believe what they want to believe. As I finish recording this video, I honestly do not know how to conclude it. I feel like I have already said everything I needed to say. Why would I repeat it? Repeating it feels useless, empty. It would be empty because if you came into this video believing this was a miracle, but you were open and you stayed with me all the way to this point, there's no way on earth you still believe in this. Why then should I add anything to this conclusion? Why should I restate the things that have already been heard by you? Did you forget them? They were too shocking to be forgotten. All I can really say in this conclusion is that I empathize with you. I know how I felt when I first began confronting this. If you are an Eastern Orthodox Christian, I don't empathize with you. I don't know how angry I would be, knowing my own church kept this from me. As a Copt, the quote-unquote scandal I received, to be honest, was expected. Knowing the history of the Eastern Orthodox and their claims and the way they talk about theology and the documents they've cited against my church, this isn't unique. This is just a common trend. If you're an Eastern Orthodox, if you buy whatever they've been telling you that we don't want to come out with the truth because we don't want to scandalize you, you're welcome to believe that. For those who are infuriated, there's nothing I can really say to comfort you. I also know that there are others who are not even watching this conclusion because they never even watched this video. They probably ran to the comments long before they were willing to sit through the evidence. Do I even address them? They're not willing to hear my words in the first place, so why would I conclude and mention them? Because of that, I find myself at an impasse. I do not think I need to say much more. If what I have shown you today has made you angry, do not be angry with me. And if anyone is upset that I made this video, even if they agree with what I have said, then I ask you to examine yourself and ask why you feel so compelled to preserve something you know is not true. Would Christ be happy with this? In the end, all of us will stand before the throne of Christ. And with that in mind, I have nothing else to add. God bless, and thank you for watching.